Have you ever felt like life is just a constant struggle? Like no matter how hard you try, nothing ever seems to go your way? You're not alone. The truth is, most people spend their whole lives chasing things that don't really matter in the end. They chase money, status, popularity, all the superficial junk that society tells them to want. But at the end of the day, none of that stuff really fulfills you. You can have all the money and status in the world, but if you don't have inner peace and self-mastery, you'll always feel empty inside. That's where Stoicism comes in. Stoicism is an ancient Greek philosophy that teaches you how to master your mind, control your emotions, and live a life of virtue and tranquility. And let me tell you, once you learn the core principles of Stoicism, your whole perspective on life will change. You see, the reason most people are so miserable is because they buy into all the lies that society feeds them. They think that happiness comes from external things, like possessions, relationships, or achievements. But the Stoics knew better. The Stoics understood that true happiness and fulfillment can only come from within. It's not about what you have or what happens to you, it's about how you respond to the inevitable challenges that life throws your way. So in this video, we're going to go over 10 core Stoic lessons that most people learn way too late in life, and fair warning, some of these lessons might hurt your feelings a little bit, but that's okay, because the truth often stings before it sets you free. Lesson 1. Your desires cause your suffering. Ever wonder why you're always so stressed and anxious? It's because you're constantly chasing after things you don't really need. You think that if you just had that new car, or that bigger house, or that promotion at work, then you'd finally be happy. But it's all a lie. The more you desire external things, the more you suffer. That's because you're putting your happiness in the hands of circumstances that are ultimately out of your control. The Stoics taught that the key to inner peace is to strip yourself of unhealthy desires and cravings. Focus on the things you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your values. Let go of the stuff you can't control, like other people's opinions or the results of your efforts. When you do that, you'll find that a huge weight gets lifted off your shoulders. Lesson 2. Most people are followers, not free thinkers. Take a look around you. How many people do you know who actually think for themselves? Chances are not that many. Most people are just mindless sheep, following whatever the herd tells them to do. They get their values and beliefs from society, from their parents, from their peer groups, never questioning whether those values are actually worth living by. But the Stoics weren't having any of that nonsense. They encouraged people to think critically, to question everything, and to decide for themselves what principles they wanted to live by. Because at the end of the day, you're the one who has to live with the consequences of your choices, not anyone else. Lesson 3. Adversity is inevitable. Resistance is futile. Bad things happen to good people all the time. It's just a fact of life. Someone you love dies. You lose your job, you get diagnosed with an illness, and when those tough times hit, most people get angry, bitter, and resentful. They ask, "Why is this happening to me? It's not fair." But here's the hard truth. Life isn't fair and adversity is inevitable. The Stoics accepted that difficult events were going to happen no matter what, and instead of raging against reality, they chose to respond with calm resilience. You can't control the waves, but you can learn to surf them with grace and poise. When you resist adversity and fight against it, you only create more suffering for yourself. But when you flow with it and adapt, that's when your true strength and character gets forged. Lesson 4. Externals don't define you. In our society, we're taught to find our identity and self-worth in external things. Our job titles, our possessions, our appearance, our status symbols. But to the Stoics, all of that stuff was just surface-level noise that didn't actually matter. What mattered was your character, your virtues, your philosophies and actions, your true essence as a human being. Because at the end of the day, all those externals can be taken away from you in an instant, but your core values, your integrity, that's something that no one can ever take away unless you let them. Lesson 5. Ego is the enemy. You know that voice in your head that's always trying to pump up your ego? The one that tells you how smart, talented, and special you are? Well, according to the Stoics, that voice is your greatest enemy. Because the truth is, we're all just tiny specks in a vast universe that doesn't really care about us one way or the other. We're not all that important in the grand scheme of things. And when you start believing your own hype and letting your ego run wild, that's when you set yourself up for a brutal fall from grace. True confidence comes from humility, from being grounded in reality and accepting your own flaws and limitations. It's about having the inner strength to admit when you're wrong and keep learning and growing. Ego, on the other hand, is just a house of cards waiting to collapse. Lesson 6. Complaining solves nothing. How much of your time and energy do you waste complaining about things that are ultimately out of your control? The weather, the traffic, that annoying colleague at work. We all fall victim to the complaining trap sometimes. But here's the hard truth. Complaining solves absolutely nothing. In fact, it only breeds more negativity and misery. The Stoics understood that the only thing you can control in this world is your own thoughts, feelings, and actions. Everything else is just background noise that you have to learn to tune out. So instead of wasting your precious life force complaining, learn to let that stuff go and focus on what you can influence. Because at the end of the day, the person you stay bitter at and resentful towards the most is yourself. Lesson 7. Memento mori. Remember, you will die. That's right, we're going there, the big D word that most people are terrified to even think about. But to the Stoics, keeping the reality of death at the front of their minds was absolutely essential for living a fulfilling life. You see, when you truly internalize your own mortality, it forces you to be laser-focused on making the most of the limited time you have left. You stop sweating the small stuff that doesn't actually matter. You become intensely grateful for all the beauty and richness that life has to offer in this present moment. And most importantly, it inspires you to start living with clarity, integrity, and honoring your deepest values right now, not waiting around for someday to arrive. Because for all you know, you could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Memento mori, remember you will die. It's the ultimate wake-up call to get your priorities straight. Lesson 8. Attachment breeds suffering. Whether it's your fancy new car, your romantic partner, or your impressive career, we all have things in our lives that we're deeply attached to. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying the good things life has to offer. The problem arises when we become so attached and clingy to those things that we suffer immensely when we inevitably lose them. The Stoics encourage living in a detached way, appreciating and making the most of what you have in this moment, but never being so attached that you can't let go when the time comes. Because here's the hard truth. Everything is temporary and impermanent. Absolutely nothing lasts forever. Cultivating that detached outlook takes practice, but it's honestly one of the most freeing things you can do for yourself. When you stop being so grasping and clingy towards things that are ultimately out of your control, that's when your unshakable inner peace and tranquility arises. Lesson 9. Most people's values are out of whack. If you take an honest look around, you'll notice that most people's priorities and values are totally out of whack. They idolize wealth, power, fame, and status. They worship at the altar of consumption and indulgence. And in their mind's hierarchy of values, things like integrity, wisdom, justice, and self-discipline get pushed way down to the bottom. The Stoics, on the other hand, had a totally different value system. To them, cultivating virtue and living with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance were the highest callings. Material wealth and external success paled in importance compared to the strength of one's inner character. They saw most people in society chasing empty vanities like fame, status, and hedonistic pleasures, pursuits that could never lead to true fulfillment or a life well lived. And they pitied these people for being so misguided in what they valued most. If you want to live a life of profound meaning and excellence, you must relentlessly question the values that society tries to indoctrinate you with. Don't just mindlessly chase success as it's conventionally defined. Decide for yourself what constitutes a life of virtue and then embody those principles with every fiber of your being. Lesson 10. You are responsible for your life. Ultimately, the greatest realization the Stoics had was this. At the end of the day, you alone are 100% responsible for how your life unfolds. You can't keep blaming your parents, your circumstances, or the world around you for your misery and lack of fulfillment. The buck stops with you. When you cultivate the Stoic disciplines of desire, action, and assent, you take radical responsibility for your inner life and your outer impacts. You stop making excuses or acting like a victim. You look at areas you're underperforming in, and you hold yourself ruthlessly accountable. Yes, there will always be factors outside your control, but you focus your energy on responding to those circumstances in the best way possible, rather than wasting your time resenting them or wishing they were different. This path of complete self-ownership and personal accountability is not an easy one. It requires intense self-awareness, self-discipline, and a willingness to look at your blind spots. But it's the path that separates the virtuous from the deluded, those who live with integrity and excellence, versus those drifting aimlessly through life. The choice is ultimately yours to make. So which will it be? More excuses and living in reaction to external forces? Or digging deep, doing the hard inner work, and crafting a life so full of wisdom and virtue that it inspires those around you? The road is rough and the truth can sting. But those able to embrace the lofty ideals of Stoicism with courage and commitment are destined for an extraordinarily rewarding human experience. One of profound tranquility, resilience, and ever-expanding self-mastery. The question is, are you ready to pay the price to join their ranks? If you have made it this far, comment down below with the word 100% to confirm that you have received the knowledge from this video. For more interesting topics, make sure you watch the recommended video that you see on the screen right now. Thanks for watching.